Hello and welcome to another episode of a Melanated Hypothesis podcast with your girl Tori V, aka Victoria Littlejohn. And it's Friday. You know what that means. We had another dope guest with a dope perspective. So introduce yourself to the collective.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. My name is Candita Hinds. I'm one of your favorite melanated therapists. I am a licensed clinical professional counselor based out of Maryland. I've been doing therapy for about licensed in Maryland for over 6 years, doing therapy for about eight. And I'm just here to spread the word, normalize therapy, breaking down barriers as it relates to mental health, and just, yeah, spreading the good word.
Yes, I love it. I love it. I'm so excited that you're here. Oh, thank you for coming. So I just want to jump right in. Okay. So how did you start? You're from Maryland. You've been doing this for 8 years. Where did that come from?
So, I'm not originally from Maryland. I'm actually from New York. But it's all right. I'm actually from New York, but I moved to Maryland in 2005, basically when I started college.
Mhm.
And I knew exactly what I wanted to do. So right out the gate, it was psychology. And so I received my bachelor's and I received my master's in professional counseling. And I pretty much started from there. So I received my master's in professional counseling in 2013. And I've pretty much been working as a therapist since then, but I became licensed in 2015, I think it was. Whew, it's been that long. So I've been doing that since then. And ever since then, I've had the opportunity to really just work uh, with a wide range of whether population and any age, every age you can think of. And yeah, that's kind of the beginning basis for me.
Okay. So what made you get into psychology? Like tell me where your mindset was at to say, okay, yeah, this is the study of behavior, people, I want to go into that.
That is really a great question. And it's funny because as I'm still trying to build my website right now. And honestly, the hardest thing for me is just being able to talk about myself. Like, what do you like? What made you do this? And I had to sit down and really reflect on what made me choose this route. And the only thing I can think of was just like I knew this is where I wanted to go. And so one day, having a conversation with one of my best friends, I said it's really hard for me to pinpoint like what made me get to this, like what was my turning point. Like some people will be like, oh, I like a nurse will say, I saw someone that was hurt and I knew then that I wanted to help them. And for me, I'm just like, I don't know what it was, but she really reminded me that naturally for me, my relationship with different people in school, whether it was, faculty members and just my friends, like I had different groups of friends. I never was that person that had like a specific clique or a
Mhm.
specific crew. I had a few crews. And so she said my ability to be able to mix and mingle with so many different people, it it, I think that in a sense made me realize that I just had this thing for better understanding people, whether they're from different backgrounds, different cultures. And I had the ability, like the natural ability, to just dive right in. And I also realized that my connection with people is so important to me, and it's almost fulfilling. So according to her, she said it was like the perfect exchange for me being able to help people, or me being able to understand people, or just being able to relate to different people was just the perfect exchange for me. So when I got to college, I was like, well, this seems right up my alley.
Mhm.
I know that this is what I want to do. I knew that I wanted to help people regardless. helping people, being in that type of service was something I wanted to do. I just didn't think I could do pins and needles and IVs and that type of coming from a doctor's perspective. So I knew that this was where I wanted to go.
Oh, I love that. That's awesome that you just kind of have that mingle, connective spirit. So, okay, what kind of therapist are you today?
So I am what you would call, what I'd like to say, that I'm a very eclectic therapist. So I don't have a very specific niche, although I'm trying to kind of find that still. I mainly use like CBT techniques, which is cognitive behavioral therapy. It's pretty, excuse me, it's pretty much the most general type of technique that a lot of people use. It's very popular. But very soon I am looking into expand that and kind of create more of a niche for myself where I start to incorporate yoga or trauma informed yoga for my clients, and also looking into doing a little bit of EMDR. But for right now, I'm pretty much the therapist that I pull from different types of techniques and really help my clients meet them where they are and help my clients with whatever it is that they need assistance with. So I have no specialty, but I'm working on it still.
Right.
Right.
I love that. I think that um, now therapy is starting to have a better connotation attached to it, but previously, um, it you know it was associated with I'm crazy or I we don't. So for me, what happens in this house stays in this house, right? So a lot of times going to somebody, a stranger, and telling them my business, that's uncommon. um have you dealt with that kind of mindset, and if so, how did you kind of break down that barrier?
Absolutely. Such a great question. I literally was just having this conversation with a client the other day where we were talking about, back in the days, specifically like, our parents and grandparents, mental health was related to, like, when you hear the word mental health for them, you automatically they think of stray jackets. You know, that's literally what they associated it with. So for anyone to talk about mental health right now, it's just like, boy, you're not crazy. You just going through some stuff. You'll get over it. You'll live. But what I've been able to do now is to make it so I'm normalizing it by letting them know that the littlest things does not have to, like, the most extreme things does not have to necessarily be just what mental health is all about. So I had a client who came and was really uncertain about why he was here, like why he was here in therapy. And it felt weird for him to sit down and talk about his emotions. And I was
Hmm.
able to connect with him um, from a cultural perspective, and letting him under and honestly, like, normalizing and validating that, listen, I understand that this is something brand new for you because you grew up in a place where they said mental health was a no-no, or mental health says that you're crazy. It's okay if you have something as small as, I'm trying to balance work and life. Sometimes you just don't have the answer and you need an unbiased opinion from someone, because you realize that the stress with work life balance is taking a toll on you, and you don't know how to deal with that, and you don't know how to manage that. So now here you are trying to figure that out, and all I'm doing is helping you better understand your emotions as it relates to that. I'm helping you to identify the stress triggers and finding ways to manage them. And once I was able to kind of like break it down as simple as that, it was like, oh, I was really hard on you then. I was really just hard on the concept of coming in and talking to a stranger. And I'm like, I mean, I know, but think of it like this: when you're at work and let's say you get a new job and you're unaware of what to do. Most of the time, you may have a mentor, you have a supervisor that you need a little bit of feedback from because you're uncertain of what to do. I was like, it's kind of the same thing. That's how I was able to relate to him specifically. But that's really what I do. I really try to use like the most simplest uh, examples to help people to normalize that therapy is really cool. It's dope.
Yeah. Um, oh, I hear a little feedback.
On my end,
I think so.
how does it sound
Um, Testing. Okay.
now? Okay.
It's better. Okay, so I love what you said about that. Just kind of having that outside person, because I always say it's like the picture can't see the frame while it's in it.
Hmm.
So as self-aware as I am, I still we need somebody to kind of what I call fix my crown and observe something that I'm doing and be like actually or help me process. Um, and my mother, she told me recently that she knew that she didn't have all the answers. She wasn't healed completely herself. So she put me in therapy. And so I've been in therapy since 7, but a lot of people I talk to, they've never been to therapy.
Right.
Um, and so I'm kind of that processing person for them.
Hmm.
And so I try to explain it as simple as that. Like you need somebody to help you. Like when you say a good idea is a good idea until you say it out loud.
Absolutely.
And
Yes.
so you need that person to be like, you're gonna do what?
Right. Right. It gives
So
us so much more power when you say things out loud, though. It really does. And then honestly, it really just helps for a better understanding. Because when you say it out loud, you're just like, maybe that didn't. I thought it sounded good in my head.
yes.
And now it's out, and maybe that's not the best decision or the best route to go. So, it works both ways.
Right. Um, so have you I know you say you work with a lot of people. Have you found that um let me see. So I'll paint the picture a little bit. So just inner city, melanated people, um, inner city people, we have a different level of trauma. It's a different level of it's compact trauma. So it's just back to back. You can't really come up to breathe. I call it survival mode. Um, that's a different kind of trauma and a different kind of culture than somebody who may have grew up in a rural or suburban area. It could be, not to say that there's not trauma there too, but it's different. And so I find that I've been in therapy since I was 7, but I've struggled. I very rarely do I have a therapist who is trauma informed or culturally um, competent to like the struggles of an inner city Black child.
Mm-hmm.
Um, have you seen this type of missing link, I guess, just in your field, and how do you kind of approach it?
Okay, so when you say that, are you saying the missing link is for like amongst the therapists or have
Yeah,
like
so just amongst your peers, do you see that kind of cultural competence that is being lacked? And then okay, so for example, I'm trying to word the question correctly. I can kind of see what I'm trying to say, but um, for a lot of people, a lot of Black people, I'll say, just people in general. But I want to really focus on, my people, my culture, and I'll talk about therapy, and it's like, okay, you have one shot generally with somebody to make an impression, especially if they're already doubtful of it. So if I say go to therapy, and then they go to let's say a Medicaid therapist, 9 times out of 10, that person has a bunch of clients that are Black, but they don't actually know Black culture. So they're unable to connect with the person. Um, which causes the person to feel some kind of way and then never come back. How have you seen that happen? And if so, what kind of ways do you think that we should start to go about changing that?
Okay. So I haven't seen it that much, and I'll say this. I think because for the most part, I've had the opportunity and the honor to work with a lot of other melanated therapists. But there was, a point in time where I did work amongst some people that were not melanated. And so they don't have the understanding of that compact trauma within our community. And so it can be difficult to relate to the clients that do experience that. So it is a thing. But however, are some therapists are, part of um, our education is to be culturally educated. And so understanding that cultural diversity and becoming more educated and more aware can help. But I have noticed that, our community too just feels like off the rip, they're just like, I don't feel like I'm going to be able to relate to anyone besides someone who is melanated. It does make it easier for them to open up because they feel like they will be understood. So I'll say, as far as seeing it, I mean, I've only seen it amongst those that are not melanated. But for those that are, most of us do have that background, that came from those compact trauma environments. So we get it and we understand it. So it's so easy for us to relate to them right away. But as far as and I just want to make sure I'm answering the question appropriately, but as far as like, how do we change that in our community? Honestly, it's just going to have to do with a lot of education, like that cultural diverse. If, if you do find a melanated therapist that doesn't understand that or has not experienced that, it really just takes a lot of education.
Hmm. Yeah, I think just that diversity. I know I had a Indian therapist, and I was telling her stuff, and I hadn't even got to the trauma, the big trauma. I hadn't got
Mm-hmm.
there yet, and she was already trying to call people, and and I was just like, no, that's old, like. But she wasn't in the culture, diverse that much for it to be. um I can't remember exactly what the story was, but you know a lot of our trauma, things that are traumatic, are considered normal. So for her to know that that was one of the normal things, she didn't know. She heard it and was like, excuse me. Just
Wow. Right.
okay. So you said that you work with a lot of melanated people. um have you always worked with a lot of melanated people, or do you feel like that has changed recently?
I have and still do work with a very diverse population. So I do see, but I will say that, as of recently, I have been getting a lot more of our melanated people. So but I do see Caucasian Americans, I see Asian Americans, I see them all. But I do mainly have African American Black people with the, as maybe that's been, yeah, I see a lot of them more than the others, but I see everyone.
Well, I mean, as far as therapists.
Oh, as far as therapists, okay, sorry. The last organization that I worked, there were a lot more melanated therapists. So it was a good diverse, but it was a lot more melanated therapists. So
Mhm.
I've worked alongside a lot of
Do you feel like more are starting to come into the industry?
I feel that way. I do. I still feel like we need more, but I do feel that more and more are starting to show up. And it's been amazing to see how the numbers are growing. It does.
That is awesome. Okay, so I know that men are typically have issues processing their emotions. Um, do you have a lot of men clients? And if so, or just in general, how do you kind of approach coming to a man and getting a man to express himself to you?
That's such a great question. I do not see a lot of male clients, but I do have some. And I'm very thankful that at least a good 5% are actually Black males. So it always puts a smile, like my heart smiles when I see Black men show up for therapy. But it is still not the norm. It's not the norm. I'm still working on them. But as far as being able to relate to them, so for me, like, kind of going back to your question, you said, what kind of therapist am I? I am really just, I would consider myself more of a humanistic therapist. I am human. I show up and I let my clients know off the bat, I am human. I'm not your textbook therapist. I'm not the therapist that you see in the movies or on the TV series. I'm human. At the end of the day, I'm a real person. We're talking about real things that happen. I meet you where you are. I'm just helping you to identify, understand, and manage whatever it is that you are coping with. Really trying to, and in that sense, I'm really helping them to normalize this process to help them heal. So I do the same thing with my men. I let them know, like, it's okay. Like, I get that. I let them know, like, I get this is weird. I get that this is abnormal for you and it's not something that you would do. And some of them don't even tell, their friends or their family members that this is what they're doing. But eventually they do get to that place where once we have those really, deep conversations where I probe and I'm asking you, well, where does that barrier come from? And then I hit them with the facts or just the cultural norms that we have normalized in our community. They're like, yeah, you know what, you're right. You're absolutely right. And some of them do come around eventually, and then they start to open up. And then you start to see that healing just ooze out of them. So, I mean, honestly, that's really how I am able to really relate to most of my male clients.
That's the psychology I see.
Huh?
That psychology coming out. Um, connecting to everyone. I love that. Just because we need, so I feel like when you said, okay, so I have this saying and I want to know what your thoughts are about this. So a lot of times people will say it's no good men or it's no good women. And I'm
Mm,
like, no, it's not enough healed men and healed women.
mm, mm.
Um, so what do you think about that? Just from your perspective?
So no heal. You're saying no healed men and no healed women.
Yeah, I think that it's just not enough healed men and women. It's not that it's a shortage of good men. They're good. They're just not healed.
And are you talking more so like in respects to like relationships, romantic interests, and stuff like that? Is that what you're relating to?
Yeah.
Oh yeah. I definitely agree to a certain degree when you say that. There's not a lot of healed men and healed women. To a certain degree, I absolutely agree. Because most of the time we do find ourselves in relationships, and when we're in relationships, number one, we're either losing ourselves because we don't know who we truly are, and it could be it honestly could be a response to unresolved trauma, or we show up in relationships with unresolved trauma, with things that we haven't resolved for ourselves, things that we haven't resolved in the past, or our past relationships are showing up in the current relationships, and things are just, turmoil is unwinding, and that does show a lot of unhealed individuals. So I do agree to a certain extent. I
Yes. When you say that, I okay, so just based on my studies and kind of how the brain works, relating to our animalistic brain, our humanistic brain, and then merging the two through emotional intelligence, uh, and then putting that together with just the trauma in our culture as Black people, uh, the lack of knowledge or the gaps of knowledge that we've missed or lost, forgotten, all the things, right? So there are things that I see that we just didn't get. We didn't learn how to um, merge the two. You know, a lot of times we get emotional and we lose all logic, or we don't have that emotional intelligence or that self awareness to know to handle ourselves when we are triggered, or to even be able to acknowledge that triggered is what I am right now. Um, so, what things or what ways would you give someone to start to develop that emotional intelligence?
do. Whew, that's a big one. Oh, that is a big one. Uh, whew. It takes a lot of inside work to be able to get to that point of emotional intelligence. Unfortunately, emotional intelligence does not, and it really just relates back to what you said, it does not come as common as you would think. So for you, you expressed that you're a very self aware person, and I'd like to say that I'm the same. But there are so many other people in this world that are not like that. And it takes a lot of inner work, it takes a lot of brain work. It takes, number one, identifying. It takes number one. It takes acknowledgement of your of not being emotional intelligent. It takes identifying that, I noticed that I'm, my mindset is very, cognitively distorted. You got to identify that first and realize that, I've got some work to be done, and really doing the brain work and the inner work to identify, like you said, where does that come from, what the triggers are, what the underlying issues are, what the underlying root cause to, my behaviors, my actions, that causes me to have these type of emotions. um that creation of a new habit, it takes some time. And
Hmm.
honestly, that inner work, I want to be a little biased and say it starts with coming to therapy. Because you're not necessarily always getting that outside. Outside of that, it's hard when you have, and I don't want to say this the wrong way, but just your friends will seem to be biased at times, so it's hard for them to teach you. But oh man, that's a good one. You stumped me on that one, but I will say it really is. It takes a lot of inner work, and you have to figure out how to do that. But I mean, I'm only biased, and so you got to come to therapy to figure that out, though. It is helpful.
Yes, I truly agree with that because, like I said, we need that processor. We need somebody to kind of filter what's going on. But so I do a lot of groundwork, and I like to I pull up in the hood, if you will. Like, so I have my little homies that I come and I just come talk to. I have some of them actually being on the podcast, That was crazy, but we got it. They finally got in there. They got masks on. It don't. It's okay. But but I just want to get that processing out there more and have a person that's like, I don't care what you do, just let's talk about it though. So,
Yeah.
um, having that processing person, but it can't be the other homies. Like you can't go to like they're not gonna, or they're gonna either they're gonna be like, yeah,
You right.
it's so you're right, exactly. It's not gonna be nothing constructive. You need somebody that
Yes.
is of like-minded, just informed in the field. You need somebody that knows,
Yeah.
that's not just gonna be like, I mean, I don't know, like
I know,
what you
I
think.
know, I know. You're absolutely right. And if this brings me to, I feel bad in a way saying that, come to therapy. And I'm in a sense, I'm being biased because I'm a therapist, and I'm just trying to throw out there like everybody go to therapy, please have it some way somehow. But I have a very close friend of mine who said to me, she was like, but what if all of us are not able to afford it? Like everyone keeps throwing that out there, like have therapy, get you a therapist. And she's like, as much as I agree, what if you aren't able to afford it? So where are the resources? Where is that information that we can get for free? Without having to go through the hoops and the loops of trying to find one that we can either afford, or just not, or maybe not even having insurance to be able to go and see one. And it really made me sit down and think, like, you're absolutely right. How do we do that? And so I just kind of go back to what you're saying, like having a processor, I guess, and just it takes someone that has the knowledge and just given that education and that information. And I think that social media, in a sense, has kind of helped with that, where people are just putting that knowledge out there or giving ideas and their opinions. I mean, it's millions of them, but it's about the access to the resources, and the want of the resources.
Yes, I feel like I'm at that point now. Because I can be a processor, or I can help you. I'm like you said, I'm human too, so I have my issues too. But I can definitely be an ear for you. But you have to want the ear. Like the shoulder is there, but
Yeah.
if you don't want the change, especially if you're talking about trying to change something, you notice something that you don't like, that takes work. You have to actually want to put the effort in.
You have to, absolutely, big time. Or, what we say is go in vain. What we say goes in vain. And I mean, even myself, that's something I had to realize as a therapist. Is even though when they come to me, it doesn't. I can't really make you do much. I can only bring the horse to the well, but I can't make it drink.
Yeah.
So it really does depend on the client's want and their needs and the work that they put in to reach their goals, whatever that is, whatever that looks like.
Do you often have clients who, I know, I've had a few jobs that had like an EAP or something, where they can kind of send you to a few sessions. Do you have people that kind of come because they were told and they didn't really want to be there? Or do you have people that they heard about it, so they was going to try it? Like, what kind?
It's so funny that you say that, because I just started my practice in 2020, in the middle of the pandemic, and the majority of my clients came from EAP
Mm,
referrals. Majority of my clients, and I'm still getting them. So I do have those clients that have been referred through by their jobs, or they use that resource that they had and said, what, I need to definitely see someone. So I've seen a lot of short-term clients through EAP, and most of them became my long-term clients afterwards. So they came in and they were just like, okay, I got these 5 sessions. I think I want to continue. This is going the way I wasn't even expecting it to go this way. and I want to stay with you. So that's been a very lovely experience. But yeah, did I answer your question? You said
No,
EAP.
yeah, sorry, I didn't mean to be like that. Package is really ugly, but yes, yes, because I know that I love that little resource, and I don't know if everybody knows it's there, but
Yes.
it's a great resource to kind of a gateway to kind of get you in. You can try it. It's free.
Yep.
Okay. You only
Yep.
get like 5 or 6, but those five or
Yep.
six sessions are powerful. We can stretch them out if you need to. It doesn't
Yeah.
have to be every week. It can be every 2 weeks, you know?
Exactly. Exactly. Yeah, that's exactly how it has worked. So, um, I love that. I love that middleman. I think of EAP as the middleman. I love that they have that resource for a lot of employees. Some of them, and that's where I've got a lot of people that are just like, yeah, I've never done this before. I've never tried this before. Or even, well, my professor or my supervisor said I should try this out. And so here I am. So what next? And then after 5 sessions, they're like, okay, this has really worked. This has helped unexpectedly, and I want to continue. So, and the next thing you know, they're telling their friends, and they're telling their friends' friends, and parents, and siblings, and everyone's calling like, I need some time with you. So I do love that resource,
Yes. I know that's been a resource. In every city I go to, they have if you get like, um, state benefits or, city benefits, you can also get behavioral therapy. Um, so those are type of resources that kind of gateway you in. But
absolutely.
I find that um, you, okay, how can I say this? Um, okay, first, any some therapy is better than no therapy. However, you have to find your therapy match, like your quality of therapist for you.
Yes, say it. Say it. Just say it. Don't be afraid. Just say it like it is. Yep.
Yes, you have to. It can't be just that I tried this one therapist this one time in band camp and it didn't. You have to keep trying because um the great thing about the therapist is their life experiences is what helps you connect to them. It's not just the book. And sometimes you may find a person who just had the book, and so you may not connect, and that just means that that's not your person. That doesn't mean that this isn't your thing, or this is a great coping skill, because just the fact that you're releasing it alone, like you don't have to ever give homework. Just the simple fact that do any of the homework that a therapist gives you, but just the fact that you have a safe place to release, like that in itself is just powerful and needed.
I am so ecstatic that you brought that up. Oh, I cannot tell you. And so many people, even my close friends, I tell them this all the time. I even tell my clients this. I said, listen, I'm so open and so honest and so transparent with them. I said, listen, you and I may not work out. We may not be a good match. I am not for everybody. And I am okay with that. And I understand that. Finding a therapist is like a relationship. This is what I tell people all the time. It is like a relationship. If you go on Match.com, you're gonna put in your interest and your preference and your this, and you may go on that first date and you realize this is not what I was expecting. We are not relating the way I thought we were relating. I'm not catching that vibe. Just wasn't giving me what I needed or what I expected, and that is okay. Does that mean you hang up the book and you don't ever go on another date? No. Does that mean I'm gonna forget about romantic interests and romantic partners after that? No. So I tell people all the time, if you go, give them at least three chances, two times, 2 to 3 times. Go to that therapist, and if it doesn't work out for you, don't let that be the end all. Go and find somebody that is your match. You're not gonna find. You may have had a relationship that you thought worked out, and it didn't work out the way you wanted it to. But you're going to eventually, I mean, in a relationship aspect, you're gonna heal from that, and you're gonna go find another another romantic interest that you may want to explore after that. So I tell people all the time that may not be the right for you, it fit for you. It does not mean that all therapists are bad. I can't tell you how many people say, I tried therapy and she was just not it, and I gave up and I never went back again. And I'm like, but you didn't try all. Cause she for somebody else. But that just wasn't for you. So go out there and find your match. I'm just so happy that you said that. Absolutely. So important. So
Yes, I think that that's important, just expressing that. I'm glad that you expressed that, because sometimes people feel like, okay, I got the therapist and it didn't work. Um, Even with myself, I was going to therapy and I tried the lady out for quite some time. I saw nuggets that I was getting. She is knowledgeable. She just wasn't. Uh, the connection was off. Like, as a
okay.
person, we were, we could have good conversations, and that would we would use we would use the time, and I would give her tips on how to, like, into her own practice, like things she could start. So it was really becoming business sessions or something.
Okay.
So,
And that's when
so
you realize therapeutic relationship was out the door.
but so but I understood. So okay, I have a question. So I'll tell you this, but so we talked probably about a year, and it was cool because she had the knowledge of a therapist, but I also have the knowledge of a therapist. I'm not a therapist, but I'm very knowledgeable, just
Mhm.
self-studying.
Mhm.
And so she it was almost like two therapists talking. So she would always say, I love this part of my day because I have, it's different. A lot of the things that I'm saying. And so she would say things like she thinks that I need to go to a therapist for therapists. So I would be like, okay, that's when it started to dwindle down, because it was like, okay, at this point, we're not connecting the issues that I have. You know, it's like there's a level for every therapist. There's level as you're growing. Just like if you have business coaches or any type of coaches, once you get to a certain level, you kind of change coaches
Mhm.
and get somebody for whatever part of season that you are in your life. Um,
Right.
so my question would be, do you have a therapist?
I do. I
Okay.
definitely do. And that's actually something that I just recently um, I got into on my birthday of last year. That's all I wanted to do. I was like, I want to start therapy. And I did it for so many reasons. I did it for just personal reasons, just personal things that I was going through. And just knowing the importance of even a therapist needs a therapist. I'm so big on that, and I decided to finally exercise that need and my right to do so. So yeah, I do. I have a therapist, and I am very happy that I have one.
What is the difference between, okay, you're like trained to be a therapist. What's the difference between, okay, I know myself and I know the information, so I can kind of do it myself, versus, or I can do it with a like-minded friend,
Mhm.
versus processing, when I say do it. Um, and versus, let me go to this outside person and process with them, even though they have that same kind of expertise as me.
So what I have done is I realized that when I go to therapy, I take off my therapist hat and I become the client. And that is so important when it comes to a therapist, seeing a therapist, is that we may go in with this, we understand that we're already going in with this really big basis of knowledge. We know what to do. We know that. We've been trying to tell everyone else, but that does not mean that we're not human and we're not going through our own stuff. So I have to make sure that when I go in, I'm going in as a client. And I think that's hard for some people. And so that could be a possible barrier for therapists that are going to see therapists because they forget to take that hat off, that hat of knowledge and technique and you know all everything that they have under their belt. They forget to take all of that clothing off and just go in as the client and going as vulnerable as they are. So for me, I'm able to discern between the two.
Okay. You spitting bars now. Okay. No, no, because I'm like, okay, wait, do I take the hat off? Because I've been accused of like, you're trying to therapy me. I'm not your client. Or like, and I'm in relationships, and it's like I'm not. I was just observing, and wanted to say something, but I
Mhm.
get that. You have to take the hat off. You can't, and that's everywhere, whether it's therapy or, if I go to my mom's house, I like that is not my client.
Yes. Yes, I can't tell you how it does, and let me tell you, it doesn't even matter because around this is like the running joke with all of my friends. It's like I'll say one thing and they'll be like, "Oh, here comes the therapist," or she's giving that therapist answer, and I'm like, "No, I'm not. I'm really just because I'm so self-aware, I'm just like automatically spitting off this knowledge that I may have if you're going through something. I'm just like, well, what if you try this and what if you try that and maybe this and maybe that. But I'm just like naturally like that. But I do try to make sure that I'm aware of when I can come off a bit therapist-y. But for the most part, I really do try to just take that off and really be. But people they will view you as such no matter what you say. They're like, oh, she got her therapist hat on. No, I don't.
Yeah, no, I was actually just processing it as a person, but okay, I'm gonna just. No, you got it.
But
No.
I think what's important though is with you obviously have a very great basis of self-awareness and you have a lot of knowledge, which is great. That's fine. But I think it's just that using that awareness to know, okay, what am I doing here at this point? Like, am I, and why am I here? And just kind of reminding yourself that in that process. And that's what I've had to do. Why are you here? Are you here to be the therapist or are you here to be the
That's so good. Okay, so I just wanted to go back. You were talking about. I had my thought. Just the. Okay, let me think. So you were talking about. Oh, okay. So when your clients first come in, when they're doing like EAP or something like that,
client?
um, what is your process of kind of getting them to open up and start to become vulnerable?
So very good question. And that really honestly depends on who the person is. So I said in the beginning, I really meet my clients where they are. So sometimes I don't always go in ready with like a whole bunch of questions and ready to interview. There are some people who are ready to lay it all down on the table. And I give them that opportunity to do so. So if a person comes in and they're just ready to, lay it down, I allow them to do so and I allow them to be themselves and open up. And then I may throw in some questions in between there to kind of get a better understanding of where they are. But I normally just ask a question, like, hey, what brings you here today? Or like, what made you reach out? Or what were you going through? What were you thinking when you made that phone call? What was happening in that moment? And sometimes, so I use some of those interview like probe questions to get them to get started. And some people, they'll come on, they won't know they won't know how to start or what to say. And then I will use that opportunity to kind of start asking questions. And that usually helps the conversation to get started. So it really depends on the person.
Okay, I like that. I've seen myself in both of those aspects. So coming to therapy, and I know that I'm about to bust, but I don't know which angle to even like. It's a big old knot. So I'm
Yeah.
here, and they said, "Come here." I got the knot. Here you go.
Right.
and, and then I've also known that this breakup has been and hard, so I specifically need to come over this breakup. Anything else that we touch, okay, but this
Right.
specific breakup is
Right.
holding me back.
Right. And so that's important too, is where I'll normally ask, whether I've asked questions or whether they've told me, what they're here for. I'll ask them what they're hoping to work on or what their goals are, so that I also have a better understanding of how I meet you where you are. Okay, I'm meeting this person at, the fifth step in their journey, or maybe this is the very beginning of their journey. So I know where to meet them to help them. An example that I use with most of my clients is I also let them know that at the end of the day, you are the captain of your own ship. And I'm technically the co-captain that says, you know what, those winds are a little rough over there. The waters are going a little crazy over there. You might want to adjust your sails a little bit. I said, but at the end of the day, you make that decision. And I think that's one thing that kind of gets them too. They're like, I like that. I don't want to make that decision for you. I let them know, like, I want you to be able to survive to that aha moment on your own. And so I make sure I let them know that. And that sometimes gives them that space to, like I said, lay it down.
I think that's good, creating that environment. um, I've had sessions that I guess with people that are like, why you here? If you don't talk to me, I can't help you. And then it's just
Oh.
been very like, I'm like, you know, and I always feel some kind of way because I do have a little self-awareness. So I know for me, like if you turn me away, okay, I can go do something alone. I have other practice. I've been in it since I was 7. So I know how to essentially get myself out of it. But for somebody who's just starting and you treat them that way, like that could be it could literally be life and death, that could be.
Yeah. So that's a technique that some therapists may use, and it really depends on the therapist. It depends on the client. Sometimes people come in and they really won't have much to say. Sometimes you really have to give them that time. I normally do that with children, but I'll always fill in that time with something really cool. So it would be like a a Q&A type of game, or we're just playing games, and eventually I'm starting to see that you're opening up, and then I'll get to start asking those questions, or I may not have to ask those questions and they'll start to open up on their own. So sometimes it does take just moments of silence for them to wrap their thoughts together and, get their thoughts together and just wrap the thought that they're here in therapy. Especially for those that that were referred there and they did not come on their own. So, it depends. It really depends. But I completely understand you when you say, if it's my first session and you're just like, well, that silence may not work. It may work for some, it may not work for the other. So you really just have to get to an understanding of who your client is.
Hmm. So, are you diagnosing clients with okay. So I have this. This is my hypothesis. This is so I have this like theory of um the way that so in mental health we have these diagnoses and personality disorders.
Mm-hmm.
Um and so what essentially what it looks like to me, looking at how the brain works, is the it's a chemical imbalance. But if we learn to regulate whatever the chemical imbalance is, we can essentially come down on the scale of, let's say, it's narcissism or disassociate associative personality disorder, like these type of things, identity disorder. Um, I feel like with awareness, um, and then the proper tools in my toolbox for this particular thing that I have, that I believe stems from childhood trauma, I can regulate myself on the, I'm doing it, I can't see my hand, but I can regulate myself on the scale of mental health. So what do you, that's my hypothesis, but what do you feel about that? Just dictation.
So let me just make sure I understand. So understanding that if someone you feel like if someone is aware that maybe their childhood trauma is what's causing the chemical imbalance, once they have that education, they can help to regulate that and get back to this like a normal state.
Yeah.
Um, Unfortunately, some diagnoses cannot be regulated to a state of what we may see as normalcy, right?
Hmm.
So, for example, schizophrenia. That
I knew you were
is
going to go for that.
something that cannot, unfortunately, it can be regulated by medication, unfortunately.
Hmm.
So there are some, just to say the least, I'll just start with schizophrenia though. There are some where there is a chemical imbalance and cannot be regulated by just identifying the childhood trauma. And once they've identified that and identify triggers and you understand your emotions better and way to manage those symptoms, they'll get back to that person that we knew at such a young age. You have some people that develop schizophrenia at the age of 25. And it can be due to trauma. It can be due to a lot of different things. But unfortunately, there are some that cannot be. I think the more less extreme diagnoses, like for example, maybe generalized anxiety or like mild depression, um, that definitely can become more manageable with identifying any type of trauma, and being able to work through that, whatever that looks like, whether it's understanding those triggers and then working on how to manage symptoms when they come, because the truth is we were all born with anxiety. And I think that's something that not a lot of people know. Like, anxiety is a very natural part of our lives. It's our natural body alarm system. So sometimes it just gets to the point, and it depends on what it is, whether it's triggered by trauma or by stress, that gets to a point where it's um, really just messing up our daily activities. And that way those are the type of things where we can say, okay, well, how did I get here? It wasn't like that before. How did I get here? Or understanding that I did have a breakup and that caused me to isolate. That caused me to just want to sleep all day or eat less or eat more or sleep more. So the more less extreme diagnoses, just to name a few, I definitely feel can be managed through uh, can be managed to get back to some type of normalcy.
Hmm.
Does that
Okay.
answer the question?
Yes. Okay. So you answered my question, but I knew you were going to go for schizophrenia.
Yeah. What?
but but I do want to. So first, I want. Can you explain what schizophrenia is?
Yes. Let me see if I can get the greatest definition. It's basically a disorder that really like affects a person's ability to think properly, feel, and even function clearly. That's like the best layman term that I can give for schizophrenia. Um,
What would an example be? Or have you ever?
I
Uh,
have I have definitely had a client with schizophrenia, and the it relates to what you were saying about like a chemical imbalance. There is like a lot of altered brain chemistry that's going on in someone that has schizophrenia. So a client of mine that I had that had schizophrenia was constantly having um, visual and auditory hallucinations where people that no one else can hear were telling her to do things, or she was seeing things that were actually that were unseen by everyone else. And that was constant for her. And she wasn't the greatest historian, but um, from past medical information that had been going on for a very long time, since her teenage years. So it didn't really identify like any type of childhood traumas, but it was just saying that she was expressing since since teenage years, since in high school, where this where they realized that there was like this altered brain chemistry going on. So I don't know if that answered your question, if I answered it the best way, but that's kind of the basis around schizophrenia.
okay. No, you. That's good. Okay. Because I think about this a lot, and um, I really like learning about trauma specifically, like just becoming trauma informed, because I think that we need our world needs to be a trauma informed system in general. Um, but when I think about like mental health, so I think that schizophrenia is one of those things where like the chemical imbalance after a while, it's kind of like the development of personality. If you do something long enough, it becomes your personality. So I feel like if you're in one of those lower states long enough, it transforms into something else. That as you, I see it as a spectrum. So as you go on the spectrum, it kind of transforms differently till you get to something like schizophrenia, where there's no turning back, something. But I just feel like something happens, and when I'm looking at it, so knowing that, so I have childhood PTSD,
Mm-hmm.
and so I know that it'll show up. I'll start to disassociate, and I didn't know that that was what I was doing all these years, was disassociating. But I realized that through getting the knowledge, and then I saw it. I was able to kind of reflect and see how much I actually do disassociate.
Mm-hmm.
So bringing that awareness to myself, I'm able to see like other things, traits, and um, more narcissistic traits, or going up the scale of all the way up to a malignant narcissist, and then the sociopath. So I'm like looking at these things, and I'm trying to see what things that I do I feel, am I feeling, do I care about this moment. Like I'm very aware to make sure that I'm regulating myself on this scale. But I know that because of my trauma, a lot of things can show up, and they can look like the traits of a narcissist, or you know um but I feel like I handle that better when, because I have this awareness of what's going on. And then I know that I feel like I have to sneeze. Okay. I know that I guess so. Okay.
Ooh, bless you.
Okay. Um, I know that I basically can like go back in my head in that moment. If I get triggered by something, I know that I can revert back. I know
Mhm.
that I might fawn as a trauma response, or maybe I might fight. But I also know that I get passive aggressive, so I'll hold it in for a long amount of time, and then I might get triggered, and that will cause the fight. But a typical trigger will only cause react with a fawn moment where I'm trying to smooth it out. And so I can see that, and then I can kind of fix it. I can call it out to myself, and I can kind of say, okay, speak up for yourself, or,
Mm.
put a boundary right here. You feel something, you don't like that. So I can kind of like change the pattern in my head. The more I do those things when conflict comes up. But I feel like the person who may be higher on a narcissistic scale, they were traumatized so much that their view is the world is bad, so they have to worry about self. And so I care about my family, like my little nest, but
Right.
anything else is like up, to to up and it's
Yeah,
up in
yeah,
smoke. Um, so I'm doing this research because I'm trying to see if that person who maybe they haven't gone over to, they're not a complete sociopath or something, so they're still in a, a, a level that we can manage, we can get to you. And so if
yeah.
we get to you and you have the will, you can use self awareness to kind of pull yourself down on that spectrum. So
I first of all, I'm just so happy that you even had the courage to share that. But I absolutely truly agree to the point where I think it does depend on where that person is, and the level of trauma that they've experienced, the amount of trauma that they experience. And honestly, it, honestly, and it really just depends too, because what you may see as a small trauma might be really big for someone else. What we see as a very mild trauma could really affect somebody to the point of no return, just for lack of better words, of no return, or a more of a difficulty for them to manage to get back to this space of normalcy. So I do believe that, for some, it sounds like for you, you said you've been going to therapy for since you were 7. So if, and correct me if I'm wrong, but it appears that you have had a lot of work done, a lot of inner work for yourself.
yeah.
You got to the point of you've done self-education, you're very self-aware, and that plays a huge role. The ability to be able to 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 stop and sense where I'm triggered and realize where I am, and do the work where it comes to, that self-talk and reframing your thinking and saying, what do I need to do? Um, where is the line that I need to draw right here so that I can manage manage what I'm going through and get back to that place where I need to be. I mean, that's huge. And that's obviously a lot of work. What about the person though that was never really able to acknowledge that or realize that until they were age 30?
Mm.
Not
Okay.
not to say that the same work can't be done, but it is much easier to help a younger person versus someone whose prefrontal cortex has already formed, and their level of decision making is what it is. And to learn anything else is going to be hard. That is what we call that cognitive dissonance. They
Yeah.
have this view of, this is how it is. This is how it's supposed to be. I've been doing this for all these years. Anything else that comes that kind of combats their evidence of what this should be is going to be really hard for them to take in. So I don't know if I really answered the question,
No, that was,
Right? But yeah, I do believe that it really just depends on where that person is.
yeah, that's so good that you said that too. When you're saying that, the first thing I thought was, um, you can't teach an old dog new tricks. And I always debate with that. I'm like, you can if he wants to learn, and I, but it's very rarely, it's few and far fetched between
Yeah.
before you find one that wants to learn.
Yeah.
Um, and then the other thing is, well, I forgot now, but I
It's okay.
know it was just around that same context of having to have that will and wanting to push to learn something new. Oh, I remember. Just somebody saying like, "I am who I am." Like, this is me. So I'll get that a lot, and I'll get frustrated. I'm like, you can redesign yourself at any. You haven't died, right? You still alive. Like,
Right.
then.
Right. 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 So you know what you say, let me tell you, I'm the same way. I truly believe that everyone can change. I get that it's harder as someone gets older, but if there is still, if you want to, you can make that effort. And you will make that effort if you want to. So even at this age, if I decide that I want to, let's just say I want to become more, I'm trying to find a great example. Let's just say I want to learn a new instrument, or I want to learn to do something. I can. It's not just because I'm in my 30s doesn't mean that I can't do it anymore. And creating a new habit. How long does it take to form a new habit? 21 days. I ask my clients this all the time. How long does it take to form a new habit? 21 days, at least 21 days. That's the same thing that goes for that inner work. So if you're coming to therapy and you identify that I've been doing this thing this way all this time. I need to change the way I do this, or I need to change the way I think this. Okay, we got a lot of brain work to do. Starts off with reframing your thinking. It's gonna take some time to create a new habit for yourself. But you have to want to. And boy, is consistency the key. Consistency, which is the hardest part.
Yes. It
The
seems
hardest
so
part.
easy.
So that's why it seems so easy for someone to say, listen, I am who I am because I tried this thing. And I mean, look at working out. Perfect example. Working out. Oh, girl, who don't got workout goals? Who hasn't been working out for 10 years and still haven't got the six pack that they wanted? They were not consistent. There was no consistency. They started off for 3 weeks and were like, I don't see what I needed to see, and now I'm done. I'm not going back to the gym.
Yes.
Had they stayed consistent, it would have created a new habit that they would have formed, and they would have had a 12 pack. They went from six to a 12.
No, that's absolutely true. And then, um, knowing what your when you said, you ask your clients goals, knowing what the goal are, knowing what the goal is for yourself,
Yeah.
because you can choose what you're going to put the effort in, so that you can choose. Like, I know that I'm not a hairstylist. I'm not a big hairstylist. I don't want to put the effort in learning how to box braid my own hair. I just don't want to do
Uh-huh.
it. Right. So I'm going to delegate that, but I'm going to put the effort more into, meditation or something, because I really want to get down. Like, I want to be able to sit and clear my mind.
Mhm.
Right. Or whatever it is. I know that I'm going to put the effort there because my goal is to be at peace in myself wherever I am in the world. And
Yeah.
so, in order to get there, I have to build up this little thing of being able to, you know,
Yes.
reset, I guess.
Yes. 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 Absolutely. And also, when you realize, the goals that it is that you want to reach, a lot of the time we have our mind set on the big finish, that end goal. Like, oh man, I want $1 million. I want to win $1 million. This is another like an example that I always like, tell my clients. We want these amazing big finish for these goals. I want to win $1 million. Okay, me too. What's the little steps though? We don't focus on the little steps that it takes for us to get there. And that can start off by, so the $1 million is not going to drop on your lap. You're going to have to go out there and go to the store, the gas station every day and buy you a lottery ticket. I don't know, something like that. Or you want to become a millionaire. Okay, that means number one, you may have to clean up your credit. You may have to start paying this off, or you may have to start looking into, I don't know, investing, or what does that look like for you? And how do we break up? How do we look at the little steps before we get to the big steps? Because when we have this big goal and in 3 months we don't become the millionaire that we imagined and we dreamed of, we get to this place of, I'm just never gonna make it, I'm never gonna be what I want to be. And then you start to doubt yourself. And that's where the anxiety and all the self-doubt and the irrational thoughts, and then you're telling yourself, I can just never be what I want to be, or I try to manifest this thing, but we're not taking our time to look at the small steps. And even sometimes even those small steps need even smaller steps. You got to break them up into smaller steps. And so when you accomplish those small steps, you give yourself a pat on the back and then you keep moving. So that's another thing, when it comes to goal setting, is not is remembering those little steps that we have to get through first.
Oh man, that's so good because especially with acknowledging, giving yourself a pat on the back. I think that we just zoom through the goal sometimes. We hit it, we don't even realize we hit it, and then we're on to something else without acknowledging and feeling that for ourselves that I did something, I accomplished something.
Yes.
That is so important. But also that those small steps, that's so funny. When you're saying it, it's like I always kind of create the visual of like life is stairs, but it's big stairs. So you on the step, and then your next goal is you want to make 10,000 a month or something. But in between those steps is little steps, and we don't talk about the little steps.
Absolutely. It's so funny that you say that, because as of recently, I was telling my clients, some of my clients, like, I want you to draw a ladder for yourself. Write your end goal at the top of that ladder, but each step has to be something that you got to step. How do you get to that ladder? You ain't going to jump from once, you're climbing on and getting your foot on the fifth step and then getting, no, you got to one foot on top of each step, on top of
Mhm.
each step, on top of each step before you get to that end goal. And so it's sometimes it's just so much more powerful when you can visualize it. So a lot of my clients, I was like, draw a ladder. Tell me what that looks like. Break it
Mm.
down. Oh, you need an extra step in between that one? Go ahead and draw that in and write what that needs to look like. And it's
No,
okay if you gotta go back down. It's all right. It is okay.
yes, you already is. I think the experience is going to push you further quicker.
Big time. Big time. Because you're like, I already got my footing on that step. So now I know how to get to the next one.
Oh my goodness. Oh, this has been awesome. Okay, so I have three questions for you that I ask everyone. But I do want to ask if you have any tips for us um, at home, any tips that we can put in our toolbox to kind of get started. Maybe as we're in between, we don't have a therapist yet. We kind of have a process person, but we're looking for a more qualified one. What is something that we can do for ourselves to kind of cope with life?
Okay. Yeah, absolutely. I love this question because we have already entered the dark months. And so mental health looks at the dark months during the winter time, predominantly between, I want to say, December and March, I believe it is.
Yeah.
This is when, the sun sets faster. There's not a lot of sun. It's cold. People are indoors. And this is the time where a lot of individuals are struggling mentally with a lot of mental distress. Those that are already dealing with depression, February, I think, is our highest rate of suicide. I could be wrong. I'm gonna have to check my facts. Things always change every day. I think February is our highest rate of suicide. And so, with the dark months, I am encouraging. everyone to really understand what self-care is. So we hear the word self-care all the time, but what does that mean? And how to combat, these dark months, and what may show up within these dark months. Really give yourself some a space for your time, like time for yourself. What does that look like? It does not mean go and get a mani and pedi all the time. Not everyone has the money for that. Okay. Self-care can really mean like taking care of you. What does that mean? That can mean, reading that new book that you wanted to read, or getting into reading, trying out this new novel, really putting some space for yourself to, I don't know, play a game, or reach out to friends or family members, whatever is helpful. Another thing is um, finding a project to do, um, DIY projects. Maybe there's something that you have always wanted to work on. Maybe you can start looking at that yourself, look on YouTube and get all the cool videos on how to create, I don't know, a tool shed. I don't know. Whatever, it is that you want to do, painting or whatever arts and crafts. Also, little things as getting up in the morning and opening up your blinds. We don't have that much sunlight. We're not going outside enough, but we need that vitamin D. Vitamin D is so paramount to a lot of people that are dealing with depression. If you really think about it, in the summertime, we're getting so much vitamin D. A lot of people are a lot more happier in the summertime. I can speak for myself. I'm much happier in the summertime. But, so opening up the shade and letting the sun shine in can really be helpful. Engaging in some type of physical activity. I mean, the science proves that it definitely helps with managing mood or bettering your mood. So those are just a few things to kind of throw out there as some tips to really do for yourself. What does really doing for me looks like? Maybe even just removing yourself from toxic people, toxic situations, toxic environments, and really focusing on you. So I hope that helps.
Oh my goodness, that was amazing. So many good things that you dropped. It did scare the question I have to ask. Okay, so I know I have a lot of friends who, they say they have seasonal depression.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and so these are the dark months that they're talking about. And then as you were saying, you the fact you believe that February is the highest suicide rate. I'm thinking I can see the picture of that because if I have been alone since December and maybe I'm estranged from family or I don't connect with them, then by the time I get to February, it's too much for me internally and I want to end it. I can see the line of how
Yeah.
that could be.
Yeah.
Um, so I guess I try to say it, and words are everything. So I'm trying to reword it as I say it. I used to say, "Oh, I have depression," but like no, because like I control it. Like I want to be, I live with it. Maybe we coexist together, or like I'm related to it or something. But it's
Mm-hmm.
not. I have control, but the only way I have control is if I realize that it's mental and it's mental health, and we're talking about um how I feel, my reality in my head, what all of my experiences have created in my head. Um, so for me, and I'm not perfect at it, but just knowing that if I am depressed, I am living in the past. I'm thinking about how I wanted it to be, what I could have did, what I should have said, like I'm thinking about all of these things. And then if I'm too anxious, or in a panic state, I'm thinking about how I want it to be, how it might be, or what might happen. I'm anticipating, and again, it could be from trauma, the trauma in the past holding me back in that place, and the trauma from the past kind of scaring me from taking that next step because I'm anticipating it's going to happen again. So the
Mm-hmm.
more I'm aware of that, the more that I have control over it.
Mm-hmm.
do you think that the seasonal depression we can gain control over, um, if we bring that awareness in more to kind of see like, okay, what I'm feeling right now. For example, every December something has happened to me the last 4 years. Every
Mm,
December around the same time, around the 10th through the 14th, in that week, there's always something bad that happens. Um, a big fight with my ex. Um, it resulted in me being arrested, and then the next year, our daughter passed away. I had preeclampsia, um, and I can't remember what happened the first year. I got stuck in a snow ditch in my car the
mhm,
first year. And then last year was the first year that I was aware that this is the time that stuff happens, because what I was doing was constantly thinking about something about to happen. Like each
mm,
week something is happening. Oh, something always happened, and then something would happen. So this year, 2021, I would acknowledge that something happened, but I thought about something good happening, and nothing bad happened. I didn't pull
awesome.
any type of negative energy to me.
Mhm,
So I'm wondering if the seasonal depression is us pulling energy to us because something has happened previously. Does that make
First of
sense?
all, no, go ahead. Sorry.
No, no, no. I would say, does that make sense?
Yes, it does. I first of all, I just really want to say that I'm truly sorry that that happened to you. I
Thank
really,
you.
the loss of a child is definitely not something easy to deal with. But I love how you did say that you did acknowledge that, this was the week that I realized so much stuff is happening. And then I was able to, reframe that thinking basically. Because, how you were thinking before, you recognized that it was a very distorted way of thinking, and we normalized that. So you're able to now recognize that and reframe that thinking. And it's like, look what happened. It's like that saying, if you think it, then it's true.
Hmm.
If you say it's going to happen, then it will happen. But honestly, when you really look at like seasonal depression and that, the disorder is really just related to the changes um, in season. And it's honestly because it's really related to just like what happens. Like in the summertime, you naturally see more people outside, so there's a lot more social interaction, there's a lot more communication, there's a lot more outings, there's a lot more vacations happening, people are going to the beach. But once the winter comes, those things are shut down, those things are closed, or they close at an early time, and so you can't go out, you can't interact anymore. So it does allow for a lot of, it's time for the sun sets at a earlier time, and so we're more moody, and it really just kind of saps that energy. We have more energy when the sun is out. Sun is not out and we're not outdoors, we don't have much energy. And so that's really honestly the whole what SAD, seasonal affective disorder is what they call it, where that
Do you
comes from.
think that it's oh, because you're saying that, and I just keep, okay, I'm seeing what you say. So when you're saying that, I'm thinking, do you think that it's possible that because everything is closed, I'm in the house, usually I connect with friends or people, whoever I consider my family during these happy, warm seasons. But now I have to, the only thing I can do is stick to my life. And I don't typically process. So that means that I'm in here in the house, and it's dark, and I have to sit with myself, and now I am over the moon. And do you think that there's a correlation between us as people not processing enough, and then the sun or the world actually making us come in, kind of like the pandemic?
Hmm.
Business shot up because the world said, sit down.
Yeah, yeah, yes, literally. I was about to say like they need to add the pandemic as another season because this was a season in itself. Okay. No, but you're absolutely right, and I think it really just depends. I mean, this causes for a lot of people to isolate more because they no longer have the ability to interact. So even with the pandemic, I can't tell you how many clients I've seen where this pandemic exacerbated so many different things that's been going on. Like it might have been there before, but they had never processed it. And the pandemic said, "Now I need you to sit down and process it." And like you said, they're over the moon, and they can't get off. Absolutely, I think it really just depends. For some people, a lot of people just became more, lonely.
Mm-hmm.
Um, because they don't have the opportunity to go outside or hang out. And we are social, creatures by, yeah, I mean, by nature. And so because we haven't had the opportunity to do that, it really has caused a lot of people to become more depressed, more anxious. Working from home is not fun.
Yeah, it has its ups and downs.
Yeah, it definitely does. I will be the first to tell you. It's hard. It's really, really difficult. But yeah, I mean, just to kind of answer your question, I think that it really does causes just a lot of people to sit back and think, and thinking in itself can be hard.
All right. Yes. Yes. And so that's
Yeah.
the kind of I'm always making connections. So I made the connection within myself that, oh, around this time of year you're doing this, and then we know it's called mental health. So it's like, is the world, now we've seen the proof that, okay, the world does not process, and when we do process, this is what happens. So
Mhm.
now it's like, okay, with the study of mental health and these seasons, I hear a lot of my friends saying they have this seasonal depression. I'm wondering, is it because, again, the world kind of sits us down to process? So I'm making this correlation. That's why it's always my hypothesis, because I really don't know, and I don't find studies to show
Yeah.
until later on. I usually find studies to say yay or nay, whatever I thought, but um, I'm just seeing this in myself, and then you're saying that, it really made me think like, okay, maybe it is mental, and it is just the world as a whole. All of us get down
Mhm.
to the point where we've classified it as these things, but in actuality, it's the effect. The deeper root is that we're not processing, and the effects of the season causes that not processing to kind of bloom more.
Mm.
Um,
Mm. I
it
mean,
makes,
there is a lot of truth to what you're saying, but for each person, it's definitely different. But I
yeah,
do
yeah.
agree with what you're saying, that for a lot of people, it can be just that, just as how you put it. Like during the time when the world is quiet and the world is calm, and you can't go out that much because it's either snowing or it's just too cold and no one else wants to go out, and you may want to, but no one else. It really forces you to sit back and relax. And what does that relax? Some people really can't deal with their thoughts.
Mhm.
And that can be, but it is the effect of the season and what has
Yeah.
occurred that does put them in that place. So yeah, I mean, for everyone it's absolutely different.
Hmm.
But I do agree with what you said.
Yeah, I know. I know there are different
I just want to
underlying
give you, I don't mean
things.
to cut you off, but I got 5 minutes before I go meet with the
Oh yes, yes. I'm sorry. Okay, okay. Let me just ask you these questions. So what does healing mean to you?
Oh, lovely. So if you are aware of my business, it is called Have Therapy. And I came up with that. Um, with HAP therapy stands for healing through awareness, vulnerability, and empowerment. And so for me, what healing means for me is, number one, that self awareness is so important as it relates to healing. If you are not as self aware, it's going to be a little difficult. Okay, so that self awareness means so much. Being aware of what you're going through, being aware of the difficulties, being aware of having to take accountability and responsibility for a lot of things. There's just so much that goes into being self aware, right? And then vulnerability. Vulnerability for the longest time has had a very negative connotation to it. I don't want to be vulnerable, because I can get my feelings hurt, but there's so much power in vulnerability. Being vulnerable is just showing up for who you are, showing up for what you stand for and how you feel. Being vulnerable can be as easy as just going to therapy and being your authentic self. And then through that, empowerment is whether it's self-empowering or just being empowered by going to therapy or being able to, being self-aware. That I truly feel all of those is what healing looks like.
Oh, that is so good. Oh, I love that so much. Okay, tell the collective where they can find you, just to get more of you, to connect with you, work with you.
So as of right now, you can connect with me where I will be able to respond through email, and that's Hinds at havetherapy.org. I can answer any questions, or if you're looking to start therapy, I am there. I am currently working on my website, which is havetherapy.org, and that will be up and running within the next few months. And once I have that, I'll also just start to have like my little social media handles and pages and stuff like that. So, but for the time being, you can email me. See, that's Candita basically. And Hinds, Hinds at havetherapy.org.
Oh my goodness. Well, thank you so much for coming today. I appreciate you spreading knowledge and giving your time. It was amazing conversation. Make sure that you guys follow her. I will put her links and email in the chat. As always, make sure you do some healing today. Peace and healing. And we are out.
Thank you.